You know, just a few months back, I decided to replay the Star Wars Battlefront II campaign on the original PlayStation 2 copy that I still own, and I thought it held up pretty remarkably well, especially for a game from the 6th generation. I didn't do this for no reason though, because I knew that EA was currently developing a Star Wars Battlefront 2, and it made me nervous for the franchise that I love so much since I was a child. However, to my delay, I did watch their press conference today, and I thought that their gameplay they showed off of the new game looked pretty spectacular. It didn't look nearly the same as the original Star Wars Battlefront 2, but you can definitely tell they took a lot more inspiration from the original as opposed to a Battlefield game. Now, naturally, a lot of people have been thanking the developer and the publisher, Dyson EA, for sticking true to the original and releasing something that looks pretty damn decent, especially with the name bearing the classic PlayStation 2 and Xbox game. However, I have a different theory, and I believe that it's thanks to the fans that this game is turning out so great according to the trailers. This may sound ridiculous, however, just stick with me, and by the end of the video, hopefully I'll be able to convince you, because I have some pretty strong arguments as to why we should thank ourselves as opposed to the developers. I'm not saying that EA and DICE shouldn't get credit for this, they are creating the game. However, knowing how EA won't even release a Sims game launching with swimming pools, I think it's more or less the fans that are gearing this game towards where it's going. EA probably knew about how big of a name this was, because if you ask any 6th generation gamer, they will tell you that Star Wars Battlefront 2 is one of the best sci-fi third and first person shooters of the PS2 and Xbox era. That's just how it works out, and it still holds up pretty well today. You can argue the same about the first Battlefront, and many fans will argue about how EA quote-unquote messed it up. However, I'm willing to defend the game. Most people just say Battlefront 1 was unfinished or uncompleted, but going back to my Sims without swimming pools analogy, EA hasn't released a complete game in so many years. Thankfully, as we can see from the many trailers, this game looks far more complete than the previous, as it has a campaign and a much more fleshed out multiplayer with all 3 Star Wars generations. Combine this with the notoriety and star power that the original Star Wars Battlefront name has, and the memes that have been popping up, which is where the title of this video comes from. Most of the memes that have been coming up come from a Reddit and Twitter page called Prequel Memes, which quotes some very random and sometimes often absurd memes from the Star Wars prequels, which requires a great amount of knowledge of them, so perhaps fans were going back and rewatching the movies, perhaps in preparation, or perhaps discovering that these films aren't as bad as they thought. Or perhaps they're worse than fans remember. Who knows, honestly, but a lot of these memeing pages have been spreading awareness of these sort of mid-generation, early 2000s Star Wars films, which are exactly what Battlefront 2 is based off of. And both fans and haters from the early 2000s that played Battlefront 2 probably saw these memes and thought, damn, that reminds me of a game from years ago. A game from the PlayStation 2 or Xbox or PC if you had it on there. And this, my friends, got EA very nervous, especially DICE's division of EA. Because as we all know from previous recreations and installments, you cannot compete with nostalgia. So DICE and EA probably saw the resurgence of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and the prequels and decided to pull out all the stops. They very well could have just re-released Star Wars Battlefront 1 with a First Order and Rebellion skin slapped on top of it and called it a day. However, they knew of the star power that the name had thanks to the Star Wars community and thanks to us spreading awareness of how big the original Star Wars Battlefront 2 was. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly the point of this video. I think that we're as much to thank as a community as EA and DICE are, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't for both us and EA and DICE, Battlefront 2's remake wouldn't come out looking nearly as good as it does thanks to these trailers. Now, obviously, I have not played it yet. I do not have a hands-on copy. However, it's looking to be pretty good. So fingers crossed, and let's hope that Star Wars Battlefront 2, the remake, comes out as good as the original.